This is our book, Dreamer of the Day. I'm going to tell the story in this book, and I'm going to tell it by not reading from the book. Well, occasionally I'll read, but mostly I'll tell the story in my own inimitable way. And I will start where the book starts, and that is when I first met Jan, and she helped me build and work with me on the first, or the trimaran, 29-foot trimaran SailVenture I was building at the time. And she stayed until we launched it, and then she finally decided to go to New Guinea and work in Port Moresby, to my utter dismay, as I had become very fond of her. And then about a year later, friends joined me, and we sailed the boat, the trimaran, up to New Guinea and to Port Moresby, where I stayed for 10 months. And in that time I met a fellow that became a very dear friend of mine, Malcolm, and in fact a lifelong friend. And he and I sailed the boat across the Indian Ocean, about 9,000 miles, and it was an interesting trip. Went to some interesting places, and we got down past inside Madagascar, down off Mozambique, and in some pretty nasty weather we lost the boat and was rescued and taken up into the Gulf to Tehran. It was outside Tehran. We were actually in Iran, and the boat took us there. It was very good, and they were very good to us. And Mao and I made our way across land, all right across Europe, back into Britain, where we went to my mother's home. She was living in a lovely little place in Essex called Benfleet, and we ended up there, and stayed there on and off for 2 years. And I ended up getting a pretty interesting job in offshore seismic work, which my brother Peter helped me get. And that turned out it was a really well good payer, and it was allowing me to save pretty heavily and to dream about my next boat. Not that I need much money to dream about boats, but it does help, doesn't it? So I did that work, and took me all over the place. In fact, back to Australia one time, but mostly in the Far East and Middle East. So, but it meant that in the end, I think it was about the early part of 1972 that I returned to Sydney, Australia, and with my other brother, another brother, I've got a few brothers, with another brother, David, we worked on my next boat, which was the Heart of Edna, which is a 50-foot ferro cement classic design, and that worked pretty well. And Jan, the latter part of that, Jan joined me again. The story's quite interesting. And then we actually lost that 2 years or 3 years later up in New Guinea, old place of ours, New Guinea, back in New Guinea. And we were with some friends at the time who were in other yachts, and we took the boat to bits and took all the bits back to Cairns, and we made our way down the coast. And after some deep decisions, we decided next time to build what I called a real boat, and that means aluminium. So the next thing we built was an aluminium catamaran, which takes up several chapters in this story, and I hope you'll enjoy that. But that took us several years, but we owned that, and then we later on built 3 really big boats. The first one was a 100-foot sailing catamaran, and then Aussie Magic, another large catamaran, and then finally Aussie Legend. And we actually sold that whole business for an amount we couldn't possibly resist. And then, as the latter part of this story, we moved up to Queensland, where we'd already bought a home at Sanctuary Cove, bought 60 acres and built a 5-star luxury lodge in the Gold Coast hinterland. And we stayed there, and we later sold that and moved back to Sydney, mainly because our daughter Kelly, who was then married and had a baby, our first child, we moved back to Sydney. And so that sort of makes what the story is going to be about, but I'm going to tell it over several chapters. I hope you enjoy it. I will post chapter 1 in a couple of weeks' time on my usual Wednesdays. And may I suggest that if you feel that you'd like to follow this story, the best way to do it is subscribe and then click the bell, and it will then, YouTube will then inform you when each chapter is posted, and it'll give you a date. And then you'll be able to follow the story and hopefully keep up with it over the period of time. I hope you will do that. I'm sure you'll find it interesting.